Violence among healthcare workers is a global problem, specifically towards nurses. In the past decade, there has been a more notable increase in events that have been further exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Nurses were deemed heroes throughout the pandemic, yet the abuse they face from the same community is at an all-time high. In an already failing healthcare system where nurses and other providers have remained the backbone, the rate of providers leaving the profession due to physical and most notably verbal violence is astounding and will be a frightening reality for Canadians if not properly addressed and acknowledged.
Nurses are physically abused. They are beaten. They are subject to sexual violence in their workplace. It has gone off the rails.
The definition of healthcare violence involves incidents where staff are abused, threatened, or assaulted in circumstances related to their work, including commuting to and from work, involving an explicit or implicit challenge to their safety, well-being, or health. It includes physical assault, aggression, sexual harassment, bullying, and verbal abuse or threats. Unfortunately, most nurses can expect to experience acts of violence during their careers and are up to 3 times more likely to experience violence than any other professional group. Nurses must be heard as they constitute 58.3% of the healthcare workforce in Ontario. Along with the regular work strains, violence is an additional contributor to burnout. Ontario's Workplace Safety and Insurance Board reported that workplace violence accounted for 13% of all lost time injuries in the healthcare sector. This is detrimental at a time when Canada is facing the largest nursing shortage it has seen in years. There are several factors that contribute to violence in healthcare. One of the largest being that there is an underlying assumption that as a nurse, violence is part of the job and must be tolerated. This is a contributing barrier to the reason why nurses feel like they are not heard, as often the community they treat, the organization they work for, their governing bodies, and provincial governments brush this off, which leads to nurses underreporting violence and therefore limits the true knowledge pertaining to the issue at large. As mentioned previously, there has been a cultural shift towards acceptance of these acts as being a part of the job, which has led to underreporting of incidents. It is believed that 70 to 80% of assaults are never reported. Within organizations itself, it has been found that there is a lack of communication and follow-up with employees who do take the time to report incidents. Often, hospitals may even discourage this. This continues to enforce a belief that it is not worth the effort to report and is creating a true underrepresentation of what nurses face on the job. Additional barriers include a lack of provincial funding to ensure adequate staffing. Often, nurses go into a patient room alone with little to no support staff nearby. These are often when adverse events occur. Additionally, the levels of security are inadequate. According to Blondo et al., nurses in the ED are significantly less positive about their safety environment. Nearly half of ED nurses report deficiencies in the security equipment, and 43% report deficiencies in security guards. Organizations also fail to provide sufficient training for non-psychiatric nursing staff. Interestingly, psychiatric nurses who were verbally abused were significantly less likely to feel threatened than ED nurses who were verbally abused. This may be the result of psychiatric nurses having more training and better skills in de-escalating patients. Finally, nurses are opposed by their regulatory body. Canadian nurses are registered under the College of Nurses of Ontario and are held accountable for their actions in every domain of their practice. Unfortunately, nurses do not receive the same support from the CNO when the public harms us. The CNO states that they share a responsibility to keeping patients safe. But how about the nurses? This further embodies the position that the public can act however they'd like with little to no consequence. Relevant internal and external stakeholders must be engaged to bring forward change and break the toxic and dangerous work environments nurses practice in. Unit managers, organizational CEOs, and nurses, including their provincial unions such as ONA, must partake in these actions together, as each group is a key player in creating change. Nurses are facing the consequences of violence, and ONA must help fight for policy changes. Upper-level CEOs with support from unit managers can create, implement, and sustain policy changes towards this matter to support and retain nurses. Implementation of new organizational policies must reflect a standard that protects their nursing staff. This top-down approach will reflect in unit leadership. Organizational strategies that can support this vision include implementation of nonviolent crises intervention training sessions for all nursing staff. These classes have been shown to increase the confidence nurses have when encountering a potentially aggressive situation. Clear nonviolent signage for the public to see has shown to be a positive sign of support to nursing staff from an organizational level, and has motivated staff to partake in a non-tolerance culture shift. Creating a committee addressing workplace violence that is comprised of patient care staff can also motivate nursing staff to write incident reports and will hold management accountable to follow up on these occurrences. This will enable data collection and further allow organizations to allocate resources accordingly, such as increased security personnel and nursing staff. External stakeholders, such as provincial governments and the College of Nurses of Ontario, or the CNO, are also key players and must recognize that the more nurses leave due to violence, the more fragile the Canadian healthcare system will become. This will therefore ensure more precarious levels of care for the public, which both provincial governments and governing nursing bodies are keen on keeping safe. Furthering media approaches such as news interviews and commercials and other educational media can quickly disseminate relevant knowledge to educate the public at large. This can help shift the public's attitude and will create more noise around this important topic, which will influence positive change that may appear in the form of improved government funding models, as well as health and safety policy changes that organizations must abide by. Individual organizations will be able to evaluate the effectiveness of the newly implemented strategies by reviewing trends of reported violence, WSIB claims related to injury from the public, and the implementation of surveys related to workplace violence. Individual units may see less staff turnover and less sick calls in relation to nurses feeling more supported and having increased perception of their overall safety. This is an important part in job satisfaction, nurse retention, and overall success of an organization to treat the community it serves, and reflects adequate government support of healthcare and especially nurses.